Hello, I'm Richard Raffan. I'm very grubby at the moment. I've just been making this little pot which involves turning and burning and a bit of brushing. Fun project, I've had a good time, and that's what you're going to see in this video. About a week ago I cut this ironbark block. There's a little video on that, and I was going to keep it for another project, but it's begun to split up a bit, and so this is going back on the lathe. Now I've got two options. I cut this as a cube because there's some figure there, and I thought that might look good on some kind of rounded shape. And my basic choices are to turn it end grain, which is that way, or the grain is actually going all over the place, but this is broadly cross grain, so I could go in through that face, and what happens then is really what happens to the sap. I might manage to keep a bit of the sapwood that way. Either other way I don't think I'm going to keep it at all. So what's the other issue here is if I go into end grain, it's just much harder work. So I think I'd rather take the slightly easier option. So I'm going to do cross grain, and this is the wider bit. So, the kind of cleaner bit with no bark and stuff on it. And I'll try and keep some of that. So that will be the top, and that means I need to draw a circle and take the corners off. Could put it on the lathe as it is, but just feels a bit more comfortable if I don't. And what I'm looking for here is where the bark is. So the more I can come this way, well, that's the maximum or the minimum width. So that's what I'm going to cut, and doesn't matter, just go one side. We'll go this side because there's more bark here. So that's the center, and we'll just get this round. The 20mm blade doesn't like to go around corners, so let's have a see of the facets. Good, and off to the lathe. I don't have a chuck big enough to hold this blank, so it's starting off between centres, roughing down with a 3/8 bowl gouge, deep fluted bowl gouge, and if I go just a bit too hard, I've got to tighten up the tailstock, as I did there. Now we've got a voiceover here because whilst the vision was recorded, the sound wasn't, so you've got 7 minutes of me talking here. Now don't go rushing off the end, otherwise that would just splinter the end grain. So come in from the other end, finger underneath the rest, so I can just ease the tool in with my thumb. And just have a look and see what that's produced. So it's cutting all right, feels a bit damp. And now just begin to shape the top, what will be the top. Tighten up the tailstock again. The grain's all over the place here, and I'm really just trying to find how the wood's cutting best, from smaller to larger diameter, which I feel it should be, or the other way around, as here. So that's going to be the top, and we now start to shape up the base, and then I need a foot, a little shoulder somewhere on this blank so I can put it into the larger of the shark jaws I've got. So the tool starts right on its side, just as you go down the slope there. Pushing a bit too hard, shouldn't really skid forward like that. And so that's the broad shape done. Now pick up a 1/2 inch spindle gouge, and that's so I can get in more easily on the bottom there, just using the wing of the tool, shear cut back to the middle, and now a little shoulder so I can flip the whole thing into a chuck. So we're turned round here, and I realised that I actually want the bottom exposed, so there's another little shoulder, and we turn it around in the chuck. Now this is quite a useful thing to be able to do, so that you can, if you can leave a shoulder, you can grip a blank from either end. Quite often quite handy. So now I begin to shape the bottom half of what will be a little pot. Still using the 3/8 inch deep fluted bowl gouge, and you can watch the shape developing up on the upper horizon of the bowl, which is what I'm watching as I'm turning something like this. So now coming in and just making a little cylindrical foot. Just check that it's small enough to fit the chuck. So this is not going to be a permanent foot, this will be removed at the end, but I am looking at these little marks and things, and at this stage I'm beginning to think I might char this form, because it's going to be full of splits, and I can get a different kind of object out of this lump of wood, different to what I maybe had in mind to start with. This now is a 3/8 spindle gouge, my favourite detailing tool, so just cleaning up the bottom. Okay, right, now the whole thing can go round into the chuck, reversed again, and I can start to do the top of the vase. I tend to call these pots. This comes from hanging out with potters in my early wood turning career, I think. And you're just trying to refine the surface with these little shear cuts. The bevel's rubbing at that point, not at that point, that was a little shear scrape. Just using the wing of the tool. Now I have a shear cut towards the rim. And at this stage I'm wondering about a little bit of shape around the rim. And then think it's probably better to get the inside out now, and I'll come back and do the rim a bit later. So this is a 1/2 inch spindle gouge, 3/8 spindle gouge, and that's what I'm going to start to bore the depth hole with. It's just a cone to get somewhere for the actual drill to get started. So in, and if it's running straight it'll just spin in your hand if you wanted to. You'll know if it's not going in straight. And then I'm going down to that little silver mark there. And so that establishes the depth to which I can go, and it also takes away the centre, which makes the tail end of the gouge cuts, which are about to come, a lot easier. There's no danger, or less danger should we say, of going across centre and the wood picking the gouge up. This is a 3/8 bowl gouge, starts right on its, almost on its side, and then rotated very slightly so you pick up a better shaving. Rotation, and then almost back onto its side in the middle. I go down as far as I can easily with the gouge. Remember, this is face work, so I've got to go really in from the rim, and from now on in it's much easier with scrapers. So I've got a 3/4 inch square end scraper. It's not quite square end, it's got a very slight radius on it, using about 1/3 of the tool, and you can see the step I'm cutting just. And now we're back to full sound, which is a relief. This is a 1 inch wide a scraper with a hose-like handle. It's a much heavier handle. Very easy to go too deep, so I've got these rare earth magnets. Just sit there, give me an idea of where I am. As you go in, this is quite damp, as I go in I've got to have the tool tilted down slightly so I don't have a catch. That's the negative rake, so the angle between the top of the tool and the bit I'm cutting is less than 90 degrees. But as I go in I can have the tool slightly pointed down a bit more, and then as I drop the handle that pivots the edge up into the edge, and you can start to bore and just go straight in with the square end tool. And the danger generally is going in too quickly and too far. See how we're going. Oops. The better way around would be this way. I don't normally use the tools this way up, so it's kind of backwards for me. Right, so that's how thick the wall is at the moment. Right here, that's probably more where I want to be. It's about 20 millimeters, 3/4 of an inch. Really don't want this too thin. Right, so having got that far, I'm now going in with a small gouge. Can't see where I put it. Right, so this is my 1/4 inch deep fluted bowl gouge. Get the rest just going in at an angle. Now to come in here, I've got a fairly long bevel on this tool so that I can come in at a comfortable angle. For a steeper bevel, I'd have to lean right over the lathe bed. So the tool's right on its side. I could do with a slightly shorter bed here. Now you're not missing anything from looking here. I can't see anything either. There's too much dust flying out, but I've got a really clean cut down to there, which is good. And I just need a slightly stronger tool. This is just too flexible down in there. I'll see if I can pick it up with the 3/8. I can feel where I'm going. That thickness, so I can go down a fraction. Yes, definitely. So if I can't, if the bevel is, oh, actually the bevel's okay for that one. This is a slightly steeper on the nose. This is the 1/2 inch bowl gouge. So I want to start the cut from about here. It's a question of finding the edge. There we are. Feel as much as anything now, and yeah, I quite like the feel of that, so that's good. And now I just need a larger round nose scraper. That's 1 inch. I thought I had a larger one, and don't seem to. Now I'm going to change the rest so that I can work more over the tool post. I've got a little short one here. And I need my magnets, which I'll get off the other tool. Right. I'm already down there, so all I'm trying to do is take away the ridge from the bottom of the gouge cut. Doing this kind of stuff, the length of a handle ideally is 4 to 5 times the length of the potential overhang. Well, I'm hanging over here that much. 1, 2, 3, 4, barely long enough, and this handle is probably nearly 2 feet, which is 600 millimeters. So I want it underneath my arm, or tucked up in my armpit. Now it's a question of moving smoothly. can't get my fingers down there, so, and the light I normally use is lighting somewhere else, so we've got this little one instead. Oh, doesn't look too bad. I think it's rather like driving a car. You never you never look at the bit of the road you're driving on, you look at the bit you're about to drive on. So I know, I've programmed my mind as to what needs doing, now I've just got to do it. It'd be much easier with a larger round nose, which I've mislaid. The worst case scenario is that I sold it when I was downsizing. Right, so there's a little decorative bump in the bottom and still a slight groove, which is difficult to see. You can't feel that. There's a little step in the curve. I've just got to move in this kind of an area. And gently. Right in the middle, there's a little kind of bump where I thought I'd got it and I hadn't. And as you move the tool forwards, then the lump just remains. Oh, that looks all right. In fact, the little cone in the middle is decorative, adding strength to a thin base. So the way to get rid of it is to feel where it is with the bevel and take the tool around and just come up through the top. It would be much easier with a broader tool or a little kind of almost square. Tempting to put a little round on that, but let's see if we can do it with this one. Yeah, much easier. Now I've made just little ridges just off centre. Oh, looks pretty good. Right, so that's the inside done. Now I can start to play around with the outside and put little beads or whatever else seems appropriate. There's a small chip out just there, which you'll see in just a second. So here's the little chip out. Now I'm beginning to think now, because of these splits, I don't see any point in filling these, because that'll just make them look more like splits and part of defective wood, which probably shouldn't have been used in the first place. But what I'm going to do instead is burn this, and but first I want some kind of chunky decoration on it, so that when it burns, when I burn it with the gas torch, that'll all add to the kind of character. So that just isn't an issue, that little bit. Now this is around 3/8 of an inch thick. Down here I've measured it, it's 15 millimeters, which is just over half an inch. It'll be slightly more down there, but not much. So I haven't got a huge amount to play with. Now I want to just get a little more kind of shape up here. This is going to end up looking like some ancient pot. That's the idea. So there'll be a little rim there. Get the line smooth right, so cut some beads here. Along the rest a little bit and then round in a circle. Some slightly bigger ones, bigger circle. Now, that's going to look better if the beads sit up on the surface. Interacting with the camera again. It still feels fat enough. Now need to get in here the scraper and move the rest out so I can tilt the tool down rather than lower the rest, which is the other way to go. It's all beginning to look a bit kind of tizzy up there. I think I'm just going to take this away. Oh, maybe leave a little bead there. Fire will destroy most of that. Nope, still too much. The 3/8 bowl gouge, really just because it's got a more convenient bevel, fairly steep. It'll be around close on 50 degrees. There. Cleanness of the cut here, not an issue because it's going to get burnt. That needs a curve to it. I'll try this shear scraping with the wing of the 1/2 inch spindle gouge. The easiest way to do this is actually from over here, but I'm getting in the way of the camera. Well, the camera's in the way of me. Right, we'll do that. Now, just to find the rest, where are we? I think I'm going to be almost burning this between centres. The nice thing about the burning is that it doesn't matter if there are chuck marks because they just get burnt away in the end. So I think I'll get the torch on what I've got, and then I can deal with the lower part a bit later. Having said that, I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to reverse this onto there and then just reduce the size of the foot a bit so there's less work to do later. Now there are little splits up here, so this is a shade hazardous, and I think what I'm going to do is bring up the tail centre. The tail centre is normally kept off the lathe, so I need to go and fetch it. Right, that's really I don't need the spike, the cone to go into the wood very far. It's just enough to stop the whole thing wobbling. Right, so I can I think I can just burn all that as it is. So I'll just turn this off and get the final shape done. If I do run into problems later, I'll need to rechuck it from this end. I can just make another little foot. Do I want a little ogee? No, I don't. Oh, that's looking okay. I need to undercut that so that when it's on its base, at least it's sitting on the rim, not pivoting on some central point. Right, now the next thing is going to be burning anything, get rid of all the shavings, and I've got to bring a table up so sparks don't go too far. So to burn it, I'm just using a little gas torch. It's a new toy for me. I can bring it at an angle and keep the pale lines in between. After this is going to get brushed, so I really want to open these splits up a bit, if anything. In the gap too, I gave the inside a brief sanding, knocked the dust out. There's a little chip out just here. We'll burn the hell out of that. It's quite nice if it gets charred, actually starts splitting when I brush this up afterwards. It just adds to the character. Now, this is the nice clean part of this activity. The next bit is when you get filthy, when you're brushing it back. And you can either use a wire brush or use a brass brush on a drill. So it's pretty aggressive. You could just use a hand wire brush. See, these are beginning to open up a bit. So it's really a question of making a decorative feature of the splits. That where the bands are, that's where there was some kind of figure. Right, that will do it for the moment. Now this needs to cool down because if I run the lathe, that just acts like a fan and fans any little ember there is in there, and you certainly don't do anything with the dust extractor on. You don't want a spark going down the dust extractor. So I'll go off and find my brushes and be back. I would probably leave this about 20 minutes so it's cooled right off. So this is a couple of hours later. This is cold now. I'm going to brush with, this is a copper, or brass rather, one. Got a steel one here which is a bit more aggressive, and then I've got these nylon ones which are almost like sanding. So I'll get stuck into it, and for this you do need dust extraction. This is extremely messy. So away we go. So you can see how the dust is pouring off. You get little swirl marks off the wire, which is quite nice to have. And with softer woods, you'll get quite a bit of variation in the surface texture. And I'd like to really get that back a little bit further, and I'm going to change to the wire. And so I'm just going to run it very slowly out of the lathe. Just that very brief little bit. I'd really like to see some of the colour coming through underneath. The holes are showing up. Yeah, I'd like a bit of the red coming through. And I can just lock the spindle and work on a particular patch. That's better. Right, and so it goes on. So I'll just reposition this every few, just do one area, and then rotate it and do a bit more. Now, in places, my beads have almost completely gone, but still a hint here, which is quite nice. Now, if I wanted to put them back, I could do that. But I'm quite liking the way the texture's coming up on this one, and soot everywhere, as you can imagine. So I'll leave you and get on with this, and probably I'll be on it for 20 minutes or so. Well, this is after about probably 7 minutes, not quite as long as I thought it was going to be. The splits are etched out a bit, holes are more prominent, and the surface is really quite almost like an orange. Let's see if we can get a tighter shot. So you can see the grain, and the beads, which were nice and round, are almost gone. So now I need to decide what to do with the top, and it's been charred a little bit anyway, so what I was thinking of doing was to char it and just flare it around inside. Oh, while we're at it, you could possibly have a look inside. So that's at a quick sanding with 120 grit, and that's all that sort of thing really needs. Now I'm just going to get the torch, the gas torch, and just go round the rim. So I need to shut the dust hole. So I could have only wanted to do just the top, then I would have the flame going into the middle, but hopefully not contacting anything else. But I'm quite happy to have this going round onto the inside. I'm not quite sure what those dribbles are, but given they are dribbles, I might just move the camera hole back a bit and give myself a bit more room. So I get a blast a little bit down into the inside. So I'll be able to get inside with the daisy wheel and clean that up all right. So the lines have grooves almost completely gone just there. So I could have been a bit bolder with my marks earlier on, or actually not too much bolder because it's not that thick. So that needs to cool. So here we are, back again. It's still quite warm this, but I don't think there are any sparks going to come off. And as you can see, I've now got the brush mounted in pin jaws. The rim is getting very nicely distorted. Now to get inside, I'll use the daisy wheel. I think I'll use that one. Maybe I've slightly miscalculated there. Maybe I'll do that by hand somehow. Will that fit over? Yes, that will fit over. So, I'll now just put some finish on and see what happens with that. I need to go back to the other chuck, I think. And probably wouldn't be a bad idea to bring up the tail centre this time. I don't want a hole in the bottom, so I'll just use a little bit of MDF, which will just hold that in place. Now we'll try some boiled linseed on this, and I've also got some silvery wax, and we'll get the oil on first. What I'm using for the oil at the moment is the little end-grain bowl I made, which was really supposed to be a video advising you not to make end-grain bowls, but anyway, it's distorted and quite useful for the oil. should I try a bit of silver on it? I think I will. If I don't like it, I can take it off. And the idea was just to see what a bit of silver does to it. Right, so I don't want it all solid silver. I want it just a very light kind of tinge. Get at it with the brass. Going back to the original brush I had, which is the steel one. One of the few things I got out of 2 years at art college is that the trick is knowing when to stop. But in order to know when to stop, you've often got to go too far. The next time you know not to go quite that far. At the moment we're travelling hopefully in the right direction. Oh, I quite like that. So, now I've got to do the inside and the top. Doesn't need much inside because I didn't put any oil on the inside, and that's the way it's going to stay. Well, I think I like that as it is.